everybody.
Hi.
We're back.
After a long break, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Margarita Wednesday because we just had two. So
Yeah,
this will be fun.
it should be. Also, Happy St. Urho's Day and Happy St. Patrick's Day, depending on when this will come out. So, do you even know what St. Urho's Day is?
No.
So, you know what St. Patrick's Day is, right?
Yeah.
So, St. Urho's Day is the Finnish holiday, essentially the equivalent of St. Patrick's Day, except, you know how St. Patrick's Day is how St. Patrick drove all the snakes out?
Yeah.
St. Urho drove all the grasshoppers out of Finland.
Good for him.
I know, right? And we celebrate with alcohol too. Primarily vodka.
Primarily whiskey.
Yeah. So, depending on when this comes out, happy holidays, everyone.
So we are here to talk about a couple of movies starring people that we have discussed quite a bit
Yep.
in this podcast, but they're very different movies. The first stars Andy Griffith, the second stars Lucille Ball, and I have a weird fixation with comedians who do dramatic performances. I always find it fascinating. If it's Jim Carrey in like The Truman Show,
Yeah.
or everybody forgets now that Tom Hanks used to be a comedic actor, but
Right.
when Philadelphia came out, I remember I was like, "Oh, the guy from Splash? Okay,
Yeah.
well, now I got to see this." So, to stumble upon these two movies, they are movies from before the TV shows, before the Andy Griffith Show, before I Love Lucy, where Andy Griffith was brought in as a he was already doing comedy. He was already doing
Radio shows.
radio shows, but you know, so he hadn't developed his completely wholesome persona yet. And this movie that we're about to talk about is not Sheriff Andy.
No, not at all. Like, I think the thing that really struck me with this one is that I actually had to rewatch it to reacquaint me with this character, because, like I've mentioned, is that, you know, I grew up on Sheriff Andy, and I didn't watch, you know, Face in the Crowd until high school. But I had to rewatch it when you said, "Hey, let's do a podcast about about this, you know, specific movie." So I rewatched it, and oofda. In the Minnesota terms, oofda. I just how would you describe Sheriff Andy?
Sheriff Andy is a wholesome, all-American father, a good guy who just wants to make everybody happy, and he's just the best guy that you could ever imagine.
Yeah, you would explain him as someone who would be able to be personable and being able to communicate with anyone, walks of life, being able to essentially being able to, you know, what's it called? You know,
We have a co-host.
Hi. It's a kitty. He'd be able to essentially take any situation and make it into a better situation, right? And how would you actually describe his laugh?
Very warm and very affectionate, and it makes you smile every time you hear it. Now, how would you describe Lonesome Rhodes from A Face in the Crowd?
Very selfish, very has his own agenda, rapey, very has
Racist.
just very cold. It's very, might I say, Trump-esque. Like, even when I went and watched the movie on YouTube again, like, you could even read some of the comments. Like, some of the comments on the actual YouTube are saying, does anyone see this as, like, Trump vibes?
Yeah.
So even people nowadays are saying, "Hey, this movie is giving me Trump vibes," and it's like, weird.
It is a movie that I feel like it predicted some things.
Right, it did. It really did. And I think it's very what's it it's very tongue twisty. It makes you want to watch the movie, but at the same time it makes you very like it makes your heart sink.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Andy Griffith, we love the character, we love the person, but
Mm-hmm.
that's because of how he portrayed, Andy Taylor.
Yeah.
What makes me question though is that, when we're acting a character, is this a persona, when we're acting a character, right? We're actually bringing forth a certain part of ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Lonesome Roads is part of that version of Andy actually in Lonesome Roads.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me cringe to think about.
Yeah.
Because, like, when I went and read some things on Andy Griffith, yeah, he did cheat on his wife.
A lot.
And a lot. And so does Lonesome Roads. Like, he has no forgiveness about it either.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely no forgiveness. He doesn't care. He has absolutely no care about, like, hurting anyone until he's hurt.
Mm-hmm. Well, he is, as we talked about before the podcast, he is a narcissist.
Yes, very
And
much so.
we both have known some narcissists.
Hi, if you're watching the podcast,
And...
we might blur that out. If not.
And so, the plot of the movie, which we've neglected to mention so far, directed by the great Elia Kazan.
Yes, amazing, by the way.
Yes.
How he just decided to direct the movie was just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Like, the whole entire movie, it is brilliant how he decided to direct it. Like, it is different for its entire age, by the way.
Yeah.
At this point in time, most movies were musicals, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have musicals like Singing in the Rain, you have Bring Me to the Ball Game, you have, just a bunch of musicals, essentially. Like, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
Yeah.
Essentially, hey, happy-go-lucky. You don't have these political agenda movies or talking about people being narcissists. You don't have these, movies essentially centering around the cases of, hey, if we take this person and, build them up, what can we make out of them? Type movies.
Which is, I mean, Lonesome Roads is basically, he's a drifter. He's just this dirtbag who one day a radio show host, a local radio show host, Marsha, finds him in a jail. She does this show called A Face in the Crowd, where she goes, just looks for interesting people and interviews them. And
keep in mind, she is also in the beginning very outgoing, very happy-go-lucky, a very just bright and bubbly personality. Mm-hmm. You can see her smile from one end of the county to the other. She has a beautiful smile. Yes. In the beginning of the movie. Keep that in mind.
Yes, and that he absolutely smashes out of her.
Just completely destroys.
But she does this one interview with him. Everybody loves him. Mm-hmm. So she's like, well, we got to do more with him. So she finds him. She brings him in. He gets his own radio show. He gets his own national radio show. He gets his own TV show. By the end of the movie, this drifter, dirtbag piece of shit is like advising a presidential nominee on like how to make people love him. So basically the entire country gets taken over by this narcissistic creep.
Yeah.
Not that that could ever really happen.
Not like we've seen that happen in our day and age or anything like that. Mm. Media, it's not influential at all.
No.
No, not at all.
And this was like, I mean, this was decades before cable news, before the rise of Fox News, before
It was on radio.
yeah. I mean, by the end, he's got his own TV show, but it's almost like a hee haw kind of a variety show that he just so happens he has these forced, rehearsed conversations with people about like politics, which is this Cracker Barrel kind of.
Right. Well, what's even worse is that, like, the fact that they're forced
Mm-hmm,
is that they seem very ingenuine.
mm-hmm,
And what I love about in the movie is that, you know, before they're even on air, like, the thing that cracks me up about in the beginning of the movie is that he talks about how he hates this sort of thing.
yeah.
And then he becomes the thing that he hates
Mm-hmm,
so much. So it's essentially him evolving into what he hates, but in all in reality, is it really what he hates or is it what he craved?
yeah. Well,
Like, did he just crave the power?
he, like all narcissists, he hates it when it's somebody else who has it. When he can have it, he deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
It's his. Everybody should listen to him. And Marcia, basically, partly for her own career, she's not a completely innocent character,
No, she's not.
um, and partly because she also gets suckered in by him. She becomes his long-suffering
Victim.
victim. You can't even call her girlfriend. She never even reaches that level.
No, she's just a. What makes me sad is that so after the segment of when he essentially blows the deal with the mattress company,
Yeah,
essentially, is that he comes to Marsha's room and is knocking in and essentially saying, well, since I essentially blow this by or whatever, making a
yeah,
pity party. And she feels bad for him, and so she gives in to him
yeah,
and sleeps with him.
yeah.
And since now that he's had her, you know, he knows that he can keep like bringing her in.
Uh-huh.
And what's even worse is that he promises to marry her.
Yeah.
And then he goes to a baton thing.
If I remember correctly, I hope it was at least high school.
I think it was either high school or maybe like freshman in college. I don't know, but they called they called the girl in the baton waving competition a child.
Because she
He
was.
he goes and marries her.
Uh-huh.
And then he comes back and tells Marcia that he was too scared to marry Marcia, giving her like freaking excuses on why he couldn't marry her. But, Marcia stands up for herself
Mm-hmm.
and wanting, essentially all of her, cut of what he is. And he's like, okay, fine, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But she's still tied in with him
Yep.
because she knows that, he's had her and she can't get away from him.
Mm-hmm.
That that's just the pull that he has on her, and that's the narcissist that he is.
And again, she's not innocent in it, but to see this woman who in the beginning of the movie is a very strong, independent woman who,
This is where you start to see her just
yeah, crater. And,
crater.
and it's, you cannot help but hate him.
What? So here's the thing with this movie is that when I watched it again, so the first time I watched it, I was actually in World War II history class with Mr. User, Hudson High School. We watched it for World War II history class to show us how easily it is to influence people to follow a leader. And we compared it to that of people following Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that these people all followed Lonesome Rhodes,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it was like. That's why we watched it, to watch how easily it was. to follow someone.
Because
And
as much as he is awful, he is charismatic.
he is charismatic, very charismatic. That's the very key note of Narcissus.
Which is why having Andy Griffith do it, you know, because again, this is before the Andy Griffith show.
It's his
It's
first
before
movie.
Mayberry, and so nobody at the time had any kind of barometer to go by, like what Andy Griffith really was, except maybe if you had stumbled upon his comedy albums or something. But the fact that we now know him as Sheriff Andy,
Yeah.
to see him in this role is
Shocking.
shocking.
The thing too is that like I said, when I first saw this movie again, like seeing him in the jail, seeing his first reaction to when he like interacts with Marcia,
Mm-hmm.
I just felt my stomach drop.
Yep.
It's just sickening. Like his character is just gross.
Gross.
Like even like with her saying that, oh, I struck gold, I did this. I don't know if it's just my experience with Narcissus or what it is, but just watching the progression of his narcissism grow into something bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually when it gets to, you know, him eventually, you know, getting the deal with the pill, you know, and then growing into this big, you know, person with, you know, eventually, you know, having the presidential candidate. It's so disgusting.
And scary.
It's scary because he has so much influence over so many people. He breathes and people are on him.
Yeah.
It is disgusting.
Well, and not to give too much of the movie away, because this is actually one of my favorite movies. So I highly recommend that you all go out and find it.
Like it's a good movie to watch, but just you'll be shocked.
Yeah. But towards the end of the movie, because Walter Matthau is also in the movie.
Oh, I love him. So at first, I love him because of Grumpy Old Men and Grumpy Old Men 2. What's actually a fun fact is that, so that's me and Tucker's favorite movies. Well, again, Tucker's my fiance, so babe. My nickname for Tucker is Ox. Because of Walter Matthew and his interaction with the girl in Grumpy Old Men 2, and the fact that she's opened a restaurante instead of a bait shop. So that's how me and him interact. So he calls me. That's how we nickname each other. That's how we have each other in our phones. But in this movie, I was trying to place him. I was like, why do I recognize your voice? Why do you look so familiar? And as I looked closer, I'm like, Ox! So
another mostly known for comedy actor.
Yeah, and what I love about him being in it is that in the end of the movie, he comes to Marcia's rescue, and I'm like, there's the knight in shining armor. There he is. Like that is the, like, yes, he admitted to loving her, but then he actually owns up to it and being like, I got you. Let's go.
Well, but he does come in to defend her and everything. He also doesn't let her off the hook.
Yeah.
He points out, this is your fault.
Yeah.
You are the one who found him. You are the one who built him up. You are the one who enabled him.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
By the end of the movie, he has a monologue delivered at Andy Griffith where he says, "You'll be back. You won't be as big. Somebody else will come along. They'll become the newest, flavor of the week.
Yes.
And, we won't learn any less." It's a very cynical movie.
It is a very good monologue, though, because it's very kind of how he delivers it. It's very to the point, but it's delivered in a way where it's like, it's monotone, but it's...
Yeah.
And he needed that. But at the end of the movie, how they ended the movie, I will never forget it because they don't end movies like this anymore ever. I don't think I've ever seen a movie end like this
Mm-hmm.
with Andy Griffith screaming. I think that will be in their like edges of my brain. Like if I get dementia, I will be like Andy Griffith screaming,
Well, and screaming just in
wanting Marsha.
wanting Marsha just because. And the thing is with narcissists, the way he views Marsha, he doesn't love her
No.
because he doesn't know what love means.
No.
He views her as a safety blanket.
Yeah.
And
because that's just all she's been.
and also as a possession.
Yep.
He owns her. How dare she? Doesn't matter that he said he would marry her, then he married somebody else. Doesn't matter anything he ever did to her. She can't leave. You're not allowed to leave.
Yeah.
If you leave, I'll throw myself off the rooftop.
And she tells him to throw himself off.
Yeah. She does. By the end, she takes her power back.
Yep.
And it's ugly, and she's broken by it.
She's completely broken. At this point in time, that smile that we saw in the beginning of the movie, gone.
She'll never have it again.
I was completely heartbroken.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the me who had saw this movie when I was in high school didn't understand this when I first saw it. The me that saw it again as an adult after dealing with narcissists completely and totally understood that brokenness.
Yeah.
Because the face that she made, you can only understand how much it hurts in your heart when someone you love that much has taken it and completely distorted everything and has completely stomped on it and torn it apart.
And yet, as he's screaming for her, she has a moment of looking back, going, maybe I should just go back. Maybe I should just, and Walter Matthau be like, no, come on, we're going.
Yeah. And that's her knight in shining armor, because if she had gone back, she probably would have died.
Yeah.
Yeah, like plain and simple. It would have been like killing herself all over.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what it's like being with a narcissist, though.
It is very much like a just death of your soul, and because I have some experience with this as well, and the way they wrap you up and make you feel so safe and protected at first, and then they degrade you, and they make you question everything about who you are. And it is all intentional.
Mm-hmm.
It is. You can maybe chalk if it you chalk it up to mental illness. It's something that okay they're not maybe fully aware of or fully in control, but it is if it's a mental illness, it's a mental illness that is evil.
Yeah, but at the same time, they do have a cognitive awareness of what they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, people have the choice on how to act. Like, if they were insane, that's different. They don't have the cognitive awareness.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference, is that when narcissists behave a certain way, they have the cognitive awareness of how they are behaving.
Yeah.
The thing that makes me have a hard time with this movie is that throughout the movie you hear his laugh. Yeah. And his laugh, like even from the get-go, just sounds so evil.
Sinister. Yeah.
Sinister, and it makes your skin curl.
It's as if Sheriff Andy were possessed by the devil.
Mm-hmm. And it makes you want to just like there are multiple times where I sat there and I'm like, I don't know if I can continue watching this
Mm-hmm.
because of that laugh.
Yeah.
Like I love Andy Griffith, and as a person, yeah, I don't agree with him obviously cheating on his wife.
Yeah.
Like he made some bad decisions as a person, you know, but well, I still watch his work. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I know in a previous podcast I had mentioned how I don't like Bing Crosby and I will never watch,
Yeah.
White Christmas ever again, but that's because of the fact that he caused two of his sons to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between him and Bing Crosby is that he never caused physical harm like that.
Mm-hmm.
The issue I have right now with Andy Griffith is that his performance in this movie too good.
Too good.
It's too good and it's too cringe.
Yeah.
Like it makes my skin
Well,
curl.
and I own the Criterion Collection Blu-ray of it, and there's interviews with him, and he says during the time of filming this, he was not a nice person because it really seeped into who he was, and he had a hard time shaking it. And you know, he tapped into something inside of himself that it takes guts for an actor to put them, especially at that time, to put themselves out there as such an ugly persona. I mean, it could have destroyed his entire
It
career
could have.
because the movie did bomb. Like it was not a hit at the time. It has developed a, a lot of respect over time and is considered a classic now. But at the time it came out, nobody wanted to see this. Everybody was like, "No, rah rah America, and we're all great." And nobody's
Right. Well, that's the thing too is that who would want to see a movie at that time that would essentially say, "Hey, there's something wrong with our politics."
uh-huh.
Who would ever want to see that? Now we live in a day and age where, we're self aware of our politics being, corrupt.
Yeah.
Back then we didn't want to acknowledge that, even if we knew that our politics were corrupt. We wanted to admit that, we just won World War II.
Yeah.
We wanted to ride that high horse of, you know, we won World War II. Now we want to be happy. We want to have musicals. We want to have things that make us feel good.
Mm-hmm.
We want Gene Kelly and Singing in the Rain. That's what we want. We don't want these melodramatic, crap.
Yeah.
We don't want these serious films.
Even if it was a drama from that time, there would have been a love story, and there would
Right.
have been
Or they would
a
want
feel good ending.
Yeah, or they would want something like, Katharine Hepburn with Cary Grant and like a Philadelphia story where it's like comedic.
Yeah.
They don't want something that's super serious.
Or even if it's super serious, like Best Years of Our Life.
Yes.
It's the happy ending that gets sort of tagged onto, or Lost Weekend, where
Yeah.
they kind of figure out a way for it all to work out.
Yeah, and I'm sure that people, if they did see this, they were probably waiting for Marsha and Lonesome to get together,
Uh-huh.
and
Or
that just didn't happen.
at least maybe Marsha and Walter Matthau's character, which Walter Matthau's character, as much as he steps in and he goes, "I'm going to get you out of this," his respect for her is gone. He doesn't particularly want her anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He feels rightfully so that he's heartbroken. She should have picked him. Um, this is the nice guy versus asshole thing that some of us have a problem with. But it doesn't have the ending where it's like, oh, now the last shot of it is like Marsha and Walter Matthau walking down the aisle.
Yeah,
and,
no, it doesn't have that happy go feeling. It has, Andy Griffith screaming at the top of his lungs. It has, Marsha, teary eyed, second guessing everything, and then getting in the cab.
Yeah.
And then credits roll.
And then credits roll, and it's so bleak, and yet, and it's in a way that is unapologetically bleak because it's like, no, this isn't going to get better.
Yeah.
This is going to get so much worse,
Yeah.
and it did.
Yeah, it did. It ended on with essentially a middle finger in saying, "Hey, thanks for your money."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, being like, "Hey, this is our politics.
Yeah.
Welcome to America."
And thank God for like Andy doing No Time for Sergeants and
Yeah, and then
stuff like that because those are the things that got him the Andy Griffith Show.
right.
You would never cast him in the Andy Griffith Show based off of a face in the crowd.
No, absolutely not. Like the thing is that he did the radio show for No Time for Sergeants, or you know,
Did it on Broadway.
yeah, did it on Broadway, and then he, because of that, he got onto the Andy Griffith Show, and then that cast a whole entire new light on him, and gave us the image that we have of him now.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that he had a rough reputation until I read about it.
Yeah.
I knew that he wasn't exactly faithful, and I knew that he had a drinking problem.
Yeah.
But doesn't make him necessarily a bad person.
No, but I did find because I bought a year or two ago. I bought the Andy Griffith Show on DVD, the whole box set, and I never. Anytime when I would watch it as a kid and the color episodes would come on, I'd be like, "No, I'm not watching this."
Yeah, no,
But
absolutely not.
I made myself watch it from episode one all the way to the end.
You brave soul.
I know. I don't think I laughed once in the last 4 seasons, but Andy's character, the Sheriff Andy character, gets meaner and more acerbic and just before he was sort of like he could get frustrated with people in Mayberry, but
Right.
he loved everybody.
Yeah.
And by those color episodes, he's got some lonesome roads poking out where he's just like, fuck this.
Well, right. And here's the thing is that so when I read some certain things is that he was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And that he actually so there's an episode where he actually has a broken
Yeah.
arm. He had actually punched the set and
Oh.
had broken his arm because of it.
I know the episode. They make an excuse of like he went and broke up a fight or something.
Yeah. Well, and when reading those and after having watched, A Face in the Crowd, I'm sitting there and I'm like, that's why I had mentioned earlier, when as actors, because me and you are both actors as well.
Yeah.
When we personify a character, we put our certain parts of ourselves into that character. So I feel like maybe Lonesome Roads really is part of Andy Griffith, and there are parts of Lonesome Roads that people really didn't see of Andy because he didn't want to show them. But as we see those color episodes,
yeah,
obviously he's going to show those more because at that point in time he just didn't want to do them anymore.
No, Don was gone, and
then on top of it too, I had read that he got annoyed that Don's character had gotten more recognition than Andy's character, and that annoyed him.
Yeah.
And growing up, Andy Griffith, was on the wrong side of the tracks or whatever. And who cares? You're being successful. You're a successful actor. You have a successful show. You should be happy.
Mm-hmm.
But I can understand where that might be frustrating.
Yeah.
But at the same point, it's that ego. But we see that ego with Lonesome Roads, right?
Yeah. He's, and I because I have acted, but I am more of a writer, and so there are characters that I have to write where people will say to me, like, "Oh, is that based on somebody, or do you like no?" And I'm like, "No, that's me. That whatever ugly, awful thing I've tapped into for that character, it's in me, and I found it, and I'm like, here it is." And we've got a intruder. But Andy tapped into it in a way that is Andy tapped into it in a way that is beyond brave, and his performance is absolutely one of the best as far as I'm concerned of that entire generation of
Right.
movies.
Right. I wish that he had given himself more grace. And at that time, I wish too that it had been more acceptable to have gotten therapy. But at the same time, if you had gotten therapy, they probably would have thrown you in the loony bin.
Yep.
Which is tragic,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it makes that generation more vulnerable, in my opinion. So who knows what they would have thought, you know, would have seen.
Yeah.
So honestly, you know, I think that yeah, he is, you know, brave, and I think he's still a good actor and everything, and I still love the Andy Griffith Show, but at the same time, it makes when he has certain angry personas
Uh-huh.
a little bit more questionable.
And a little bit harder to watch because
Yeah,
that's Uncle Andy.
yeah, a little bit, because it's, all I can think about now is the Lonesome Loads laugh,
Yeah.
and that makes it very hard.
So, A Face in the Crowd, a great movie, and we will be right back to talk about a not so great movie from a great comedian.
Yeah.